Hi, in this video we're going to look at some of the basic tools used in the saddlery industry. I'm Simon and welcome to Oakside Saddlery. For marking the leather then, you need a few different tools. This one is a round awl. So a round awl has a nice long straight line there. It's fairly sharp but not overly sharp. It's a bit of a point, but it's a round end to it. It's very good for just pushing it down the side of things and you get it on there. This one is a bone folder. Bone folders then, we can use these to mark with. You can see this one's had a bit of use. It's probably not even bone anymore, it's plastic. You can use it to mark a line if you want to. You can use it to buff some edges down. Quite a good number of uses on these. Other thing then, we need to just be able to measure things so we can get the right sizes and straight lines. So we've got a standard sort of 12-inch metal ruler there. This is the same as well. So this one's just in millimeters, but this one has a stop on it. The stops are really good. We can loosen them up, adjust it to where you want, and then you can guarantee that this side is the same length on everything you do. One of the other common things we need to mark is a 90-degree. We're quite often going to get a nice square edge, and it's a lot easier if we can place one of these on the side of the leather and get your square edge marks up before cutting. And next up we have cutting. It's one of the main things that people want to buy first is knives, things like that for cutting their leather. Depends on what sort of leather you're using. If you're using a lightweight leather, then yes, you'll get away with a nice simple craft knife. Really good. Just snap the ends off. Don't need to sharpen them. They're always sharp. And the blade sits away nicely, so that's always good. Go a little bit thicker. Perhaps you want to use something like a clicker knife or a straight edge knife of some sorts. Again, these are nice. You unscrew the handle, which means the blade is free, and you can replace the blade. You can have different types of blades for different things. They're really good. Don't have to sharpen them, although they do tend to get stropped a little bit. As the leather gets a bit thicker then, and you start using bridle leathers, which is what I tend to use, you're going to want some sort of saddlery type knife. So this is a head knife. It's a single head knife. It's my go-to knife. They're sharp right from this point all the way around to the other edge there. They can be used in a variety of ways. They can do your skiving. They can cut across everything. I prefer them to a double one, which comes across over here as well, mostly due to the fact that I don't tend to cut myself as much. And this one then is our skiving knife. So a skiving knife, again, flat on one side, this is smooth, and on the other side there you have your sharpened edge. It cuts through across the leather. It's not designed really for cutting through the leather, but for thinning leathers down. So that works really well. And it's not just leather that we cut, we also need to be able to cut our threads. So just a nice simple pair of scissors, nothing too big. You don't need to get any fancy ones, just something that you can get in, cut a thread off quite tight with. Next thing we're going to look at are edging and tidying up the edges of your leather. If you don't bother finishing the edge of your leather and polishing it, staining it, really it's just a cheap way of doing it. People call it rustic. It's just a lazy man's way of doing it. An edge looks so much nicer if it's been stained, polished, rounded off on the edges. So to do all that, it's not too complicated. We can have these. This is an edger, so this is a number 2. This tends to be used on, for me, on dog collars, dog leads, camera straps, belts, most things to be honest. This one here is a number 6. It's a bit bigger. If we look at that blade edge on there, the number 6 then I use on the back of holes, crew punches. It makes the buckle sit a bit smoother and a bit nicer. So they work really well. So they're our edges. We also have our screw creases here. So this is a screw crease. You can heat these, hence the reason it's a bit black on the sides. If you notice, one blade is slightly longer than the other. That's so that can be pushed against the edge and leave a nice line all the way down evenly along the side of your leather. It seals the leather up, makes it look nice, tidies it up. You could adjust this one, so this is an adjustable one. I tend to have two, so one is adjusted for the crease and another one is adjusted for where my stitch line is going to be. So I tend not to bother messing around with them. The other thing I do tend to like is when I've stained leather, I just use a bit of old denim. So this is just a pair of old jeans that have been cut down. The piece of denim works really well just to push on it. A bit of elbow grease, a bit of heat created by it works really well. And we can then use a piece of wax and a slicker. If you want to use a slicker, just a piece of wood, or the bone folder again. So this is a slicker. You can get different types of these. Some are better than others. It doesn't matter too much. They work really good. Nice seal to the edge of the leather. Next we come on to stitching. So to do your stitching, you need to know where you're going to make your holes. So these are a variety of stitching type things. We have here, which are the traditional pricking irons. So these are very small point, very fine. We've got a 10 stitches to the inch, 10 stitches to the inch, and an 8 stitch to the inch. They work really well, just marked very, very lightly on the top of the surface, and you can see where you're going to stitch. The other ones we have here are stitching irons. So stitching irons, if you notice, the teeth are straight on these, so they all go right the way through. So these are 4mm spacing, and then we have a 3mm spacing. You can see they're different. If we compare these to the pricking irons, you can just see where the teeth are slightly different, slightly finer, slightly angled different. They work really well. They both do the same. I tend to use these all the time. I don't punch all the way through with them, but I use them to mark the leather with. I use them to mark it because it leaves a slightly bigger dent, and if the light's not brilliant or my eyes are going again, it's a lot easier for me to see where I'm going to stitch. To stitch then, I use traditional methods of stitching, so I use a nice simple awl. You can get fancy ones of these, you can get all manner of different titanium blades, you can get everything. All you really need is a basic simple one. When you're first starting, just get yourself a nice simple one. You want a diamond awl, which is what this is called, so it's got a diamond blade on it, sharpish point, a little bit sharp down the side, so it will cut your threads if you don't careful when you're going through. You're also going to want some needles, so these are harness needles. We'll have a look at harness needles later. These are number 2. And your thread, we can look at how we threw these. This is a braided thread on this one, but you can use linens, all other things. Why have I got a set of pliers? That's a strange one. So these are Saddlery pliers. If you notice, the inside is smooth, and the reason being is if your hands get a bit hot or a bit sweaty, or the hole's not very big, you quite often will find that you're going to have to pull that and pull it through with your pliers. Yes, it looks bad, but it works and does exactly what we need it to do. With most leather work then, you will need to punch some holes through it. So we have a variety of ways of punching holes. Most times we're going to use some of the traditional tools again. So this is a oval punch or a crew punch. As you can see there, it's got a flattish hole with rounded edges. Very good for seating a buckle in. Once you punch that, the buckle will fit in there quite nicely. The other ones are round punches, so these are really old ones. They're probably World War II. There's even a war symbol on there, so there's probably something on it. Can't really tell what it says in there, but I think they're Joseph Dixon ones. So they work really well. Again, use these on certain things. A bit knackered now. That one could do with a bit of an edge over to it and tidy up. But again, really old. It even looks like there's some old Saddler's stamps on there. That's been stamped in separate to him. To punch something like that through, big like that, you're going to need a big mallet. So this is just a vinyl mallet, works really well. It's big and heavy, doesn't take too much to smack one of them through to be able to push the leather through. If you don't use one of these and use a metal hammer, you'll get, the reason the end of this is ground off is it mushrooms over, and it's quite dangerous. You can get bits flex off if you're not careful. So always make sure you use a wooden or a vinyl mallet for any of this. When you've punched a big hole with that, you're going to want to put some sort of edge around the inside of that hole. So on the inside edge of it, you're going to take that slightest part off. So I tend to use a number 6, run it around the inside of your crew, and it makes the buckle look a bit better, and it fits into the pin much better. Smaller holes then, so where the buckles are going to pin into, we're going to use our smaller punches. So 2 I tend to use. This is an oval punch. So it's a number 23. Number 23 now, I think they don't do them like that anymore. They change them around and measure them different. But this one's really good for most of my work that I use. Belts, buckles, dog collars, anything like that tend to have a nice oval hole. When I come to making a bridle, perhaps, or horse bridle, I tend to use round holes. So probably even smaller than this one. This is a 3, so it's quite a big one. Traditionally, you would put a round hole on anything with a silver buckle, white metal buckles, white furniture, and you would put a oval hole on brass furniture. So yellow buckles, gold buckles would all have oval. When it comes to something smaller, you just need a smaller mallet. So if you're banging in your stitch markers and things like that, just have a smaller mallet. You can get fancy mauls, you can get all these other stuff, but if you're just starting up, get things that you can just buy in your local DIY shops, hardware stores. They're going to be a lot cheaper and easier for you to source. Lastly then, if you're going to hand stitch, you're going to need a set of clams. You can get different types of clams. Again, these are traditional clams for me, English type clam. I had these made when I was at college. They're just like a massive pair of tweezers, to be honest. You can put your leather in the end of there, grips it in place. These have just got a bit of napper on the outside of them, so it protects the leather a little bit. As you can see, the way they work, this end sits on the floor between your feet. As it comes up between your knees, you grip the outside of this, and when you're gripping this, you can hold your leather in the front there, and you can stitch through it. I do traditional stitching, and as this series of videos carries on, I will start to work up to showing you how you can simply and easily traditional stitch with two-handed saddle leather. So follow me for more, and we'll see where we get on from here. Thank you for watching. Like, share and subscribe, and goodbye.